My name is John Dakin. I am the chair of the membership committee of the American Ethical Union, and I am so delighted to have you all here for the first of several workshops that our committee is sponsoring today. And I hope you'll stop in for any of the others you might be interested in, whichever you like. Our first one kicking things off today concerns what the ethical culture movement can learn from the Quakers. And our speakers are Scott and Sue Walton. Scott is a member of the membership committee, and I'll be doing a full introduction in a minute, and his wife, Sue. For fun, you want to advance the slide. We're hoping to bring ethical culture into to new ways. So you can turn off the slide now, Jake, and you can spotlight just me.
Is that rebranding?
Yes, definitely. Exactly. So, so let me go ahead and share a little more about our speakers. Scott and Sue have been involved in ethical humanist and ethical culture since August 2000, when Scott found an article in the Chicago Tribune about the former Ethical Humanist Society of Greater Chicago. He and Sue went to their first platform the following month. They immediately became involved and soon made lifelong friends. Scott went on to become society president and served on the AEU board from 2009 through 2015. He's currently a member of the AEU membership committee. Sue has been a board member and secretary locally, and nationally, she's known for her service on the AEU board development committee and the president's council. In 2016, the Waltons helped incorporate the Chicago Ethical Humanist Circle. Beginning in 2015, as their society affiliation was in flux, Scott began reading about Quaker philosophy, and he and Sue began attending their local Quaker meeting to supplement their ethical culture activities. After retiring and moving from Chicago to Indiana, Scott and Sue experimented with several different forms of Quaker worship before settling into membership in the Fairfield Friends meeting. On a personal note, I'll say that in the time that I've been working with Scott on the membership committee, he's often mentioned about what he's seen in his Quaker meetings and what he's seen in the Quaker movement, and some of the interesting ideas that he and Sue have encountered when they've gone to Quaker conferences. And so I've been gently encouraging him and Sue to bring some other ideas in a more public way. And I'm so delighted that they said yes for this year. So Scott and Sue have asked me to pose some questions to the group that you can hopefully keep in mind as you listen to their talk. So number one, has your society networked with other religious groups or their affiliates? Has your society worked with Quakers or Quaker meetings? Does your society have problems raising money? Does your society have factions? Are your board or annual business meetings tense or have sharp divisions? Does your society contribute a substantial share of its budget to help others? So listen as the talk unfolds, and you may hear some ideas or some potential tips or tools that you may be able to take away from this talk to be helpful in your local societies. So without further ado, let me turn things over to Scott and Sue.
Hi, we're glad you're here. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, but this is the philosopher. He's the boss.
Being modest.
Yeah, so Quakers are basic, their legal name is actually the Religious Society of Friends, and the term Quaker was a pejorative nickname given to them in the 1650s by their opponents, and the name stuck. William Penn, the founder of Pennsylvania, was a Quaker. He was given a large land grant because the King Charles of England owed a lot of money to his dad. And we're not Quaker State Motor Oil. We're not Quaker State Restaurants, which are out in the Ohio and Pennsylvania area. And Quaker Oats has nothing at all to do. And we live, incidentally, currently in a town called Plainfield. It was founded by Quakers from the area of the Triangle. And so like if Guilford Township, in fact, is Guilford, North Carolina, is we're named for that area. Our township is called Guilford. And so we have a connection with the Triangle and more. We are, our mascot in Plainfield is called the Fighting Quakers. And we thought, huh? We were looking around, what's this? Quaker Boulevard. There's also, there is a Quaker Day, and things. So it's interesting how it comes up here. So here you go. Yeah, so.
Okay, maybe you'll start and John's little slide showing ethical humanist under the Quaker sort of picture for Quaker oats. There may be more to that than we know. The pastor, the Quakers call paid clergy pastors. Everyone is a minister, so it's a little different terminology. And he was accused of being a humanist by someone else on some email he was doing. He looked it up and said, hey, and he talked to us, maybe we really are humanist. And so he wrote back and thanked the guy for pointing it out to him. And the guy said, no, you misunderstand me. You're going to go to hell if you're a humanist. So then the next Sunday, what happens? He gets up in his brief message. He says, I'm a humanist. And he had a Bible verse, probably Jesus was a humanist. We're probably, a lot of us are humanists, and even the atheists in our groups are humanists. And so I mentioned that to John, and then he came up with the Quaker Oats logo and an ethical humanist. I thought that was pretty good. But getting on to more of the philosophy, the Quakers are they're a very inclusive group and tolerant group of people. I think it's one reason we like them. I know many ethical cultures and ethical humanists do the same things, but in our area here, the Quaker meeting that we've decided to join is the most liberal religious organization in the whole area. There is no Unitarian church right here. We tried to start a group of our own and I think we went on, what was it? We tried to start a meetup group, and some people were interested, but we had meetings, no one would show up. We found one woman who did come. She was part of 40 other meetup groups. She doesn't have any time for us or anybody else. So when we went a little different route, and we said, okay, well, what can we find here locally? And the most liberal group we could find was this Quaker meeting. So that's what sort of led us to this location. Now, the overall philosophy, the Quakers were founded by George Fox in the mid-1600s. And they were totally revolutionary for the day. They said, for example, that the Bible wasn't the end of religious revelation, but that people could hear and could meditate and open their souls, as he would say, and hear God themselves. They didn't need a minister. Matter of fact, they were all ministers. Later on, things changed a bit, and people thought, hey, wait a minute, we could use paid professional clergy. So they're called pastors. And our ministers who are paid quite well. So just to give you an example, our minister, Phil Gilly, gets $60,000 for part-time work. His actual real business is writing books on religious and fiction, Quaker fiction. So that if what God is saying to us today, then what the Quakers do is about every yearly meeting, which is a group of local meetings, come up with what's called a faith and practice. It is, we'll say, a how-to guide, maybe a best practices guide. There is no set belief that everyone has to have as a Quaker. But it is an idea of what people in that area thought were important. And so it's a very evolving religion. Much unlike many others, there are people which are fundamentalist evangelical Christians as one part of Quakers, and there are atheists in another part. And they have many things together. In a lot of ways, they work together very well. But this is due basically to their openness and tolerance of differences.
We can say that, for example, there is a liberal meeting in downtown Indianapolis that hosts and actually shares space with a Latino evangelical Quaker group. And they're totally opposite.
Yeah, but they get along fine because they have things in common. There are 4 different flavors of Quaker. The one that is the most liberal and the one that we belong to in Evanston, Illinois, is called Friends General Conference. If you're going to work with any group, we suggest you find one of their affiliates because they'll be the most likely to have things in common with the ethical society.
They're the ones that are based in Philadelphia for our Philadelphia friends.
Yeah,
They're the guy.
right, yeah.
They're the people, I believe, on Market Street. Anyway, that's where their offices are.
Some of the things they have in common in their consensus is, first of all, they don't take votes. They don't use Robert's Rules of Order. What they do is that they sit, they have a query, something is brought up, and then they think about it in meditation. And after that, they try to make a decision what they should do. The person who runs the meeting isn't a president, it's a clerk, the clerk of the meeting. And he says, look, I think this is what we've been talking about. Do you agree? And either they agree or they don't agree. If they don't agree, he tries again to see where they are. So they don't take votes. They work by consensus. Now, this sometimes makes Quaker process slow. Like, for example, the meeting we joined, it took them 7 years to decide to build a new building. But then after that, it only took them 3 months to raise the money for it. Well, one of Phil's friends said, we did it just the reverse. Another group took a vote, a majority vote, and the church decided to build a new major addition, but it took them 3 years to raise the money for it, and then they still needed a mortgage. So maybe in the long run, it all worked out pretty good. But that's the example of even something as major, building a new building, of what can take a while. Another thing, other things that they do, which probably we should go into a bit, is more how they work in consensus. Probably all Quakers are involved, feel like simplicity is a major goal. Quakers often live well below their means. They tolerate others. There is some silent worship in all Quaker meetings, even the evangelical parts of them. They believe highly in integrity and peace. They were one of the original peace churches, and they believe in equality. The Quakers were one of the first groups in the country to advocate the freeing of slaves. And this was done, for those of you in the Philly area, at the Germantown meeting, which was then not part of Philadelphia, in 1685. 1685. They were 100 years ahead of many of the other people who became abolitionists. There are other early Quakers went around the country, even down south when travel was hard, and advocated people to free their slaves. This was not popular. This is why the people in North Carolina ended up coming here in the 1820s, 30s, and 40s, because they figured they found out they weren't really liked too well by their slave owner friends. But that was how much they felt about slavery. They actually pulled up and left and came here, which at that time was giving away free land. Now, how do Quakers work? They have clerks, not presidents. Ministers are paid. I mean, ministers are non-paid members. Pastors are paid clergy. And the groups decide if they want paid clergy or not. It's all across the board. Gatherings are their large retreats, such as our assemblies. They have all their meetings are meetings for worship. Some of them are like a religious service, others are a business meeting, but they start out with some silent meditation. In some cases, they have special meetings for specific purposes. They, like on COVID, on healing. The Evanston Friends we had belonged to before had a meeting on Ukraine. But they can call a meeting on any particular topic as they choose.
Like right now, the Evanston meeting has, for the last 4 years, has had an ongoing meeting for anti-racism, so that they're constantly involving what they're learning, and like so that a meeting can be a series of events.
And when instead of having elections, as we would tend to have in most organizations under Robert's rules, they have a committee which figures out a slate of people. They call it a service roster. And they're asked to serve for a year. Now, people can say no and not do it, but that is considered bad form. The slate is brought up, including the presiding clerk or president, the officers, the treasurer, the secretary, committee chairs, committee members. It's all presented. And then after the first meeting, it is held over for a second meeting before it is approved. It's usually approved or disapproved in a minute. But we'll go on further later of how that works. You see, this way, people aren't trying to get elected. There's not electioneering. People aren't trading votes. People are just basically, hopefully, working together as a group for the common good. And that's why they do this. And at meetings, votes aren't taken. Approval just means that the clerk was right. His reading of the meeting was correct. But the clerk calls on people, but he can't, like a president, have much power in running a meeting.
He can't tell them to shut up.
Yeah. So sometimes they talk on way too long.
They might say, hey, they might gently push them and say, get to your point nicely. Business meetings last less than an hour.
Yeah, but some things are held over and not decided then. Quakers like to do good works. Education is a major part. Since every Quaker was supposed to be a minister, they had to be educated. And in 17th, 18th century England, most of the people could not read. So the first thing the Quaker meetings did is started a school. Even here in Indiana, the first schools were started by the Quakers. As a matter of fact, the reason why our mascot is the Quakers is because there was a Quaker academy here well before there was a public school. When the community got its act together and said, hey, we want a public school system, the Quakers said, we're not going to compete against you. Matter of fact, we'll deed over our property, our building, our little farm, everything to you, and go, God bless you, go run your school district. They were so happy about that they referred to the team later as the Quakers, which is really an oxymoron because many Quakers are pacifists. You think we lose all of our football games.
But we just won, and our high school is not exactly, they're better known for their music, bells and bows, than they are their football team. but their track team just won a state championship for the first time in about 20 years.
So it's one of the smaller schools in the league, so the bigger schools usually win. But it's really great to hear the cheer, because the cheer starts out, "We are Quakers, mighty Quakers, mighty Quakers." And that drives that drives the Quakers wild, because one of the a person had previously been a pastor. His two daughters were cheerleaders for the Plainfield schools.
He's like, oh.
And so they really loved it, because they thought of Quakers in a totally different way. But think if they say, "We are ethical humanists, we are ethical humanists, mighty humanists, mighty humanists," at your local high school, oh, that would make you feel. Also, Quakers, they have retirement homes. They're big in retirement homes. One of the main chains is headquartered outside Philadelphia. They have maybe 40 retirement homes in the country. It's it's a business, but it's also a charity, because they don't charge top buck. With my mom, we had trouble finding her an affordable retirement home, and then she needed assisted living and nursing. And it was quite challenging in the Chicago area to find those at a price that we and she could afford, really. Well, the Quakers try to address that. They also support refugees. They support equal opportunity. They have a group that for legislation. So that there are a number of networking opportunities that an ethical society may want to work with, and not even necessarily work with an individual meeting or church or society.
To go further into the legislation, they have it on the state and national level. They call them Committee for Legislation, and actually have a spot in DC where they operate from, National Committee on Legislation, and they are right across the street from the US Senate. In Indiana, we actually have an active local group that will be fighting against what will become a very restrictive abortion law. I expect this weekend our local yearly is meeting, and that will be a definite point of discussion.
So it's just to let you know, it is the Friends Committee on National Legislation. They have like 20 million in assets, an income a year of 10 million. They're not just Quakers, they branch out. They're very successful. Another group that you might have heard of is the American Friends Service Committee. This was started by Quakers in World War I, so that young men would not be drafted to fight, but could do alternative service. There are these days about 150 million in assets or something. They're a major organization. And they would certainly, they're looking for people to network with at all times. As far as schools go, there are about 28, I didn't realize there are 28,000 students nationwide in the Quaker private school. They're quite large out east, but there are even some in our area. There are 15 Quaker colleges. So education has been a large part of their life. And so I guess I don't want to talk on forever here, because I could use probably some feedback of where to go from here. So I'd like to open it up for questions if anyone has any of us.
I wanted to pop in just for a second to do a little bit of facilitation, because there was one or two things that I know that we had talked about. I wanted to make sure that you had addressed as much as you had wanted to. Could I?
Sure, by all
means. Open-ended
questions. Talking on and on.
No, this was I wanted to ask you, as humanist yourself, as non-theist yourself, I was wondering if you wanted to say anything further about what it is like for you. How theistic does it feel in the particular meeting that you settled on?
Yeah, it is way more. Evanston was non-theist. That was more to our liking, but we moved to a more conservative part of the country, where the meeting has basically positioned themselves at the liberal end, but the end is basically
Mhm.
liberal Christian, post-Christian, general theist, but accepting of people like us are atheists.
Yeah, I would say that we did look, one of the first meetings we attended, we thought was liberal, and then they turned, and it got to the point where, oh my, we'd go out and we'd literally have to clear our heads because it wasn't for us. And so we went looking again. And unlike, there was a comment and on Sunday about meet and greet and how you network with people. We're lucky in the fact that we have a Quaker, there's sometimes, in one case, there are 3 Quaker meeting houses within 5 miles of each other, which isn't the case with ethicals. So you can't choose, like we could go looking and, you know, voice your concerns. We ended up looking around. We went to about 5 different Quaker meetings before we settled on this one.
I have one more question for you all before I'll turn things back over to you to field questions from the audience.
Okay.
One of the aspects of ethical culturist philosophy is the idea of act so as to elicit the best, and seeing others as possessing inherent worth and dignity. And I was wondering if your encounters and time spent amongst the Quakers, if they're the way they operate, do you feel that has informed your own ethical culture philosophy about those areas?
I would say in somewhat yes, because like the Sunday school uses the the AEU program
The Golden
on the
Rule.
Golden Rule Sunday School. Again, you see, every Quaker church meeting is totally sovereign and independent, and they can feel free to leave or join a regional group. Our regional group here is called Western Yearly Meeting. It has about 2,000 members, about 33 local, in some cases very small, Quaker groups. They are well funded, have about 7 million endowment. They operate a camp. They contribute money to a Quaker college, Earlham College. They have a nursing retirement assisted living home. There's a K through 8 elementary school. I am now on the board of our local housing development, which has, for $500 a month, you can get basically a 500 square foot studio. They have studio and 1-bedroom apartments for basically $1 a square foot a month, and the market is probably $1.25 a month.
So you see them emphasizing good deeds.
Yes,
Oh,
a lot of good deeds, and as a place where certainly they agree with Felix a lot, Adler a lot. We're doing things. At one time, I read someplace, I'm not sure where, but possibly Bart knows, that the societies are supposed to should spend like 25% of their money helping others. Most of the Quaker meetings we are part of do that.
Definitely. We can say that a couple of weeks ago, we did, one of the people said, hey, I need money for my friends from Ukraine. We've got a mattress, but it's not a good one. Bill goes, hey gang, let's see what we can get for her. Well, by the end of the day, the woman had well over $700, which they went online to Costco, and they just didn't buy a mattress. They bought a whole bedroom set, plus a few more things, bedding and everything else.
See, money then came in later too. Some people didn't have a check, but they gave an IOU basically.
Right. The woman, ironically, she had thought to wear a dress that had pockets. She didn't realize how big they were. And she goes,
their pockets were full of money.
She's like,
IOUs.
Yes. So this is what happened. This was like in an hour they raised this money. It was amazing.
The group is phenomenally generous. If a problem comes up, there are problems of COVID, a group raised like $100,000 in a weekend.
Well, and I think that circles back to what you said before, that long, slow process of consensus seems to lay the foundation for a generosity of spirit in community.
Yeah.
Or like we're helping a group that's buying a shelter here in Plainfield. They're getting a house and turning it into a shelter. And the Family Promise is what, and our local meetings and other Quaker meetings are supporting it generously.
Well, I want to turn things
And
back.
that is something that didn't take 5 or 6 years of thinking. They just said, this is a good idea. Let's help.
Well, I like to just to turn things back over to you, Jake. You can take me off spotlight and you can field any questions there might be.
Okay, I see Chris Kamen has his hand up.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm curious how we all, I think, are looking for more diversity in our ranks, more diversity in terms of age and race. I'm sure in terms of sexual preference, gender identity, etc. What kind of diversity do you see in the Quaker meetings you go to?
Well, there are Phil Gully marries gay people. There are gay partners in our meeting. We had attended a meeting before, which was liberal but turned more conservative, and the gay couple left and the minister left.
Wow.
So we said, okay, this is our cue here. The writing is on the wall. These aren't our kind of people.
They vary with everything, and there are Afro-Americans, and among the thing, there are local meeting is part of a yearly meeting, which in turn is part of a international group called FUM, Friends United
meeting, and they are in Kenya. They do things all over the world, Belize, Kenya. They run the Ramallah Friends School in Palestine. It's the only school that the director knew of where Christian and Muslim kids attended the same school, and their parents helped out and did things, and they weren't at each other's throats. They actually worked together on a high quality. They use the International Baccalaureate, which is a world-known secondary education. So, and their graduates go all over the world. So, they charge about €6,000 for tuition, which is a lot of money really in Palestine. They provide some aid and some scholarships is available, but people sacrifice because they know their kids will get a good education, they'll be totally fluent in English, and they'll be able to get jobs and go to school outside the area.
It used to be a boarding school, but now, due to COVID and due to what the Israelis are doing, it is no longer a boarding school. So yeah.
They don't have any Jewish students. They used to, because of course with the Palestinian, the occupation of the West Bank, the way the Jews, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces treats the Arabs is just obscene. They can take their kids, sometimes they're 2 hours late to get to school because it takes that long to get through Israeli security checks.
Right.
It's just phenomenally messed up, but that's one of the things that the Quakers support so that these children can get a top quality education.
Right.
Thank you.
And I see, Diane, yes, you're right. That's right. The Ramallah Friends School started, I believe, in the 1860s.
So it's a long time.
So it's a long-term process. It's been a project for many, many years.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess.
Betty's got her hand
Betty.
Dan Broughton and then Betty.
up. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you call on the people then.
It's Jan here. One of the questions that you asked about was, do our societies network with other faiths and stuff? And one of our main activities is with the Interfaith Council for Social Services, which has long worked with homeless people, and we cook at the shelter and get food for them. And I believe I'm not sure whether the Quakers are part of that group. They do have non-theist groups, Buddhists and other people in the group. But the one where we're associated more with the Quakers is the Orange County Peace Coalition. And we actually meet at the Friends meeting house, and along with an Al-Anon group, and I've been there, we're meeting with a Habitat for Humanity group. So they do a lot of networking with all sorts of groups in the community. And I can't remember now exactly what the protest was about, but they had a big protest down at Fayetteville, which is the center for a lot of military installations, and a very large coalition or group that advocated for different peace, anti-war things. Personally, in terms of the Quakers, we have friends who are, I wouldn't say they're Quakers. I think they're affiliated. I think their kids went to schools, and we went to their son's wedding in a Quaker meeting house, which was really pretty interesting. It was, we sat there in silence for like 20 minutes. I could barely hold my daughter down, who loves to talk. And people got up and said things about the couple, but essentially they married themselves. There was no, minister or pastor figure there. The words that they shared had to do with just marrying themselves. And I was really unaware that they had pastors, since most of my
Some of them do.
Yeah.
Some of them
A
don't.
lot of them don't. In the area where we were in Evanston, there never was a pastor. The Friends General Conference, the most liberal body, does not have, almost no meetings there have pastors. Here we are, where we now in Indiana, more conservative area, about half the meetings have a pastor. And since the people were kind of reluctant to have pastors, one of the decisions made by the yearly meeting, the umbrella group, was to pay a substantial part of the cost of hiring a pastor. And so now more of them do it, because a substantial, if it's not all the Quaker groups are well funded, but fortunately the regional group here is very well funded and they pay for it.
Yeah.
One question that I would like to ask is, in the more theistic groups, how do they express that? Do they have prayer? Is it a
They have prayer, they have Bible readings, which is like,
yeah, do they read the Bible?
yeah, they read the Bible.
Jesus and all that.
Yeah.
Many of them read the Bible. The Bible was considered to be the word of God, but it's 2,000 years old. And so the current Quakers, in many cases, their faith and practice has basically updated the Bible in various areas. Of course, the early Christians in the 17th century thought that was heresy and burned Quakers at the stake. They were ahead of their time. But you're right, and many Quakers groups have never had any professional clergy. They don't want it. The original Quaker philosophy was there should not be professional paid clergy. But later on, as I say, other groups have found out, gee, you're gonna have a guy do all this work, you're gonna have to pay him for it. And so out of practicality, many groups, as like many ethical societies, have found out that they benefited from professional paid clergy. You probably attended a meeting that didn't have that, because I mentioned before, the peace is a big factor in the Quakers. That George Fox, the founder, was asked to fight in the English Civil Wars of the 1640s and 50s, and he did not. He was offered a captaincy and other benefits. He turned it down because he said, we need peace. We don't need to have more civil war. This, like if you know your English history at all, the English Civil War was probably as brutal and bloody as the US Civil War was. It just happened about 100 years early.
We
have a couple other questions.
Betty Chia?
Yeah, I was thinking about my first experience with Quakers. I was in the National Ethical Youth Organization, and we had a series of gatherings with other people from other religious groups, which were on the liberal side. And I remember one of my clearest early memories was of a Quaker who speak to us. And he told me a story, and I wondered whether in 60 years the practices had changed at all. He said that one person had approached him and he said, I've been coming 25 years and I'd like to join, but I can't figure out how.
Well, there is some truth to that too.
I wanted to put that out and
Good.
No, there's definitely truth to that. The Quakers are so open; they're not closed. We went to meetings, although we said we were Quakers, new to the area. We lived in the Chicago area, and they put us on their list. We got their financial reports. We could go to their business meetings. We were allowed to vote in the Quaker way of doing it. We were full participants of the meeting. So what Betty is saying is not uncommon that people are friends for years before they eventually decide, well, I'd like to join.
Well, the point was here that it was hard to find out how to join.
Yeah, because it's just so open because they all figure you're a member of things. So that's it.
The Quakers are so laid back, they're never going to ask you for money or to join.
Well, that's something that I don't think would work in ethical culture, frankly.
Okay. Okay.
As if it's not already. Kathleen O'Connell?
Hi, I really appreciate your personal experiences, or you're telling us about your personal experiences. You mentioned that you decided to leave one Quaker meeting group because it had gotten too conservative. I'm wondering why, or how could you tell? I'm trying to think about how does that happen in a consensus group like that, and how could you tell?
Well, how in this particular case, there was a liberal minister. She was there in her first time out of divinity school, that she had come from a very liberal Quaker tradition. But she wanted a job as a pastor of a Quaker meeting. And she was as liberal as the people were in Evanston, where we were, Evanston, Illinois. We were probably one of the more liberal meetings in the country. And we found out she was good, and we met a gay couple and a couple couples with children, which seemed liberal. And I said, this seems to be possibly for us. And then she was fired. Her contract was not renewed. And at that time, things got quite a bit more conservative. And we just fortunately in this area have a number of Quaker meetings. So we said, okay.
To clarify, her replacement was the group had decided that they wanted to meet. This wasn't during COVID, and she was saying no. She'd been a chaplain at a hospital and was driving in 50 miles, even though there was a parsonage where she could live. She chose not to take use of it, and instead would drive every weekend up from Bloomington, Indiana, which is about 50 miles away from us. And in winter is a tough hoe because Indiana is not all flat, it's hilly. But there's her replacement, the people that were coming in to give the Sunday morning presentation were talking about the Bible. They were talking about literalism, and it was not for us. And so we started to look.
Thanks.
John?
So I put a link in the chat, and there, and if you Google non-theistic Quaker, you'll see some resources, and the American Humanist Association has a nice page within their overall web environment, in which among many pages where they in effect are saying basically, if you're an X but you don't really believe that anymore, come on over to humanism. And they make a very nice pitch to Quakers who might want to choose humanism and join the AHA. And it's really a very lovely summary of what Quakers are about and why so much of what they're about is humanism, either straight up or humanism clothed in other garb. When I was learning more about Quakers, in part from the Waltons, I got kind of excited because I was thinking, maybe, I'm thinking a little like the AHA was, and thinking, maybe we can get ourselves some people to come on over in our direction, because we do have more of a congregational capability than the AHA does for the most part. And when I researched this a little bit, one of the things I kind of came to conclude was Quakers are so darned open that those who are non-theistic, or they drift toward non-theism, they usually are able to find a home for themselves within the Quaker umbrella, and they don't really choose to look elsewhere. So I don't know how many recruits we'll get necessarily, but I think there are so many good things that we can learn from them. My wife's aunt is a Quaker, and when I was working with the Washington Ethical Society to revise our governance, and I was really interested in increasing the inclusiveness of our operations, I looked to some of their materials about how they are so inclusive in their decision making. And I don't know if people noticed, because they said it kind of quickly, the Walton said it kind of quickly, but they mentioned that even a business meeting is a worship service, that every meeting for any purpose. So it's not like we're going to get together for a platform on Sundays and we're all about eliciting the best. But boy, we're going to talk about the budget, then, no holds barred. The Quakers don't give up their philosophy just because they're talking about money or new building or choosing a new clerk. And I was just very, very touched and moved by that aspect of their philosophy.
One little thing you should know, the Humanist Institute, which is part of the AHA, was actually founded by Quakers and was taken over by AHA in about 1993 or thereabouts. And so there is still a Quaker link. It literally is the Humanist Institute is a 501c3 that was formed by Quakers of the humanist persuasion. So it's interesting that what is now a training facility, training institute for ethical leaders, was founded by Quakers. We should also say that Bob Bierson is a graduate of Haverford, and was talking about when he went there, he was required, all students were required to go to at least one religious service per quarter or something like that. Also, Christian Hayden, who is a leader in training, soon to be leader, has spoken not once but several times at FGC gatherings. I actually spotted him when we first started. I said, wait a minute, is that the same
Is that
Christian?
the same Christian?
And then I see his picture. That's him.
That's him.
So that's it.
Yeah, there are quite a few. Another connection, several times the AEU board has met at Pendle Hill, a Quaker conference center in suburban Philadelphia. So that there are several connections that we've seen over the years.
See ya.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I do have an experience with Quakers to relate. This is pre-pandemic, so it was a few years ago. A friend of mine who was also a member of our local society, who's now moved away, had a connection with a person who was a member of a Quaker society. I can't remember the town. It may have been Montclair in New Jersey. it may have been Morristown, I can't remember. But she said, oh, we've been invited to attend a Quakers meeting. And I'd been curious about the Quakers for a long time because I had a couple of friends when I lived on Long Island, and they were the nicest people in the world. And so we went to this Quaker meeting, and what completely amazed me was that long period of silence when you're supposed to meditate on a point that they give you to meditate on. And to me, even as an adult, it was just far too long. It may have been 45 minutes, but there were a couple of children in the group, and we never heard a squeak out of them. And I thought, these children are really well trained. Never heard any disturbance from them. They just played in the corner while the parents meditated. But at the end of those meetings, and business meeting was a part of that whole thing, and in which we really had very little interest in their budgets and things, but they did talk about their meetings and the next project that they were going to work on. But when we left the meeting, they'd been very welcoming, but when we left the meeting, we just felt that for our way of thinking, there was just too much God and too much Jesus and too much Bible. So this may have been a conservative group that, we've not had an experience with a very liberal group, even though they were very welcoming and they were very nice to us. And at the end of that meeting, after we left, I got a very polite card from the person who was running the meeting or who was in charge of the place, asking us to come back and saying, really nice things about us. So they certainly are very, very nice people. And I had this wonderful experience, the only time I've been to a meeting house. So I just wanted to tell people that I'd had that very brief connection, but we just couldn't abide with so much Bible and the Jesus stuff that was going on. It was just not in our way of thinking. So thank you for listening to me.
Sure, definitely. I will tell you that it takes practice in meditating. First time I went, I had my pad and I was actually writing down stuff, ironically, for the AEU. And he told me, stop. And it, luckily the person next to me understood that I was unethical because she was a fan of our friend, the next guy in line for us, Ken Novak. And she just sort of like, she just looked and saw AEU and knew what I was up to. But later on, I got to it, and I can meditate. I can go in silence for an hour and things. But there are things that will happen. So you were not unusual, and kids do it. So that's
yeah. As a matter of fact, they'll often start off with kids doing, and there's a Sunday school, maybe 10, 15 minutes. So the older kids, they're getting pretty good. And the Quaker schools, generally, even for young kids, they have a short period of silent meditation. They found it helps the kids calm down, focus better.
Betty Chia? Just unmute, please.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Betty. Is she muted?
Can you find your unmute button, Betty?
Yes.
There you go.
I did.
Okay.
I was just wondering whether, again, in terms of what one can use from another group, whether there's a listing of pastors that can be drawn from, well, if we were looking for an ethical leader, because it happens every so often, recruiting people.
I would probably say go to the various yearly meetings of the groupings of Quakers, at least on the Western Yearly Meeting site. It always lists meetings are looking for guest speakers and others, people who are willing to do things.
right. In other words, there are pastors that are not, you know, they're technically qualified to give talks. And they announce what they can do. Among them is a man, is a musician. So he doesn't just give, quote, a sermon, his music. He's quite a good musician. I don't know how many different instruments he plays, but he does do that. So,
well, it was a musical program, was the program.
right. So, but we can put you in contact.
But we can, there are a number of things. Contact the FGC, the Friends General Conference in Philadelphia would be certainly is a good lead for people out east.
There's also the Baltimore yearly meeting, which is the one that closest, but there's probably John may actually know the local regional group in DC. So
I'm not looking for a new.
I know, but that's
I'm
those
just
are
saying, if you
those are
want a
sources.
speaker,
If you want a speaker, those are sources.
Quaker
Yeah.
groups look for speakers too. For
Diane?
example, our minister, his contract says he should give 3 sermons a month. So the group is always looking for the 4th or 5th Sunday to be filled by somebody else.
Okay.
Diane? You are muted. And we can't see you either, so don't know if you're trying to unmute.
I am. My internet's a bit unstable. I apologize. So I'm a non-theistic Quaker, and I'm married to someone who used to be on the board of the Secular Coalition for America, who is a rabid atheist. And we raised our kids both in Quaker First Day School, that's what they call Sunday school, and the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, which has a lot of people who are, may have been raised Orthodox and are atheists. And anyway, I think the reason why somebody could attend Quaker meeting for 12 years and not figure out how to join is that one of the early beliefs was not to evangelize because denominations went around the world evangelizing and not doing much else. And so it was a clear distinction. But as a result, we are a graying organization and a shrinking organization. So one of the best ways in for young Quakers, who, by the way, tend to be more racially diverse than older Quakers, is through the Friends Committee on National Legislation Young Advocacy Program, where they're actually time organizer their home geographies to do work on issues of concern. And so that's an exciting sort of green shoot within Quakerism. And the last thing I'll say is that the aspect of tolerance definitely requires non-theists to be patient with anyone who expresses a lot of theism in their messages. And also there have been experiences, even recent experiences, of non-theistic friends being written out of meetings, which is basically the way Quakers kick people out. So I have a friend, I have an actual relative, both of us are ex-Catholics, who actually tried to officially modify the Faith and Practice book of New York Yearly Meeting, which is one of the most liberal yearly meetings that includes about 3,000 Quakers in New York State, New Jersey, and Connecticut. And he tried to explicitly include non-theists in the Faith and Practice, and was told it's too big of a fight. We don't want to do that by the committee that was in charge of modifying it. So it is very much an internal work in progress in terms of Quakerism, but there's a lot of good work. And the other last piece I'll share is that the equality piece is what drew me to Quakerism. In the 1600s, for a man and a woman to found a new denomination that said men and women are equal, and for somebody like Bayard Rustin, who was gay and Black, to be able to basically organize the March on Washington from the Quaker seat he had in New York City on index cards, there's such an inspiring legacy of people who acted on their witness. And so and the last piece also to go back to the original about people not proselytizing is that to join a meeting is an act of conscience. And so people are very reluctant if someone doesn't overtly say, I really am convinced of being a Quaker, I want to join, and I want to call myself a Quaker going forward. That act is such a personal act that people don't often encourage you. And it took me 12 years before somebody said, gee, you've been so involved, why don't you join? So that's the end of my story. And I'm sticking
I'm
to
curious, what ethical society are you with? Curiosity. I'll catch up with
She
you.
may not want to share.
Okay, or put it in.
I did just say, yes, thanks, Diane. Your experiences in many ways mirror ours.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, I have a couple of things to say. Most of my adult life, I was associated with Quakers. So I moved into Philadelphia, and I wanted a more convenient meeting. So there are certainly meetings in Philadelphia, a couple of them that are very big and powerful, important meetings. So I tried that, and the reason I did not join, because I was convinced that and I could have continued there, was that they didn't really need me. And I found ethical society because I felt like there was a need here from what I could offer. So I came in 2003 or so. And then fairly soon thereafter, there was a woman from the Central Philadelphia meeting who came who began to come to the Ethical Society. And she was concerned that the Philadelphia, the Central Philadelphia meeting was not active enough, not socially active enough, not social justice concerned enough. So, and she saw that the Ethical Society was. So I was impressed about that, that she moved from the Quakers to us. And finally, more recently, I'd say past 4 or 5 years, our society has been involved with an interfaith group called Power. And some of you may have heard of Power, but in some, we have different campaigns within Power. I'm more associated with the one regarding education, and it's focused on state funding, but other matters as well in education. And while there was there were a couple of people who were involved from the Quakers in that group in this campaign, they are not anymore, and I haven't figured out why they have dropped away. One of them, though, did have a fairly serious illness, so that may be preoccupying. In that group, though, we offer reflections of ourselves at various meetings. So we get flavors of all kinds of religion in these reflections. And I think I'm happy to say that we held our own. And in fact, we don't end the meetings anymore in saying, in Jesus' name we pray. So they recognized and very publicly recognized our presence in this group Power. The Quakers may be more involved in the economic dignity or the there's a criminal justice campaign within Power. There are other groups too, and we joined Power because we feel like it does magnify our concerns by being associated with others, but it's helped us understand other orientations and the goodness of people in those regards. Thanks.
Thank you.
I don't see other hands. So unless there are some final questions that can't wait, perhaps I might invite the Waltons to make a concluding comment if you'd like. Any concluding remarks?
Could I say one more thing that I thought?
Sure, sure.
Yes, that I don't know that the Waltons have said this, or I'm not sure I was paying close enough attention all the time, but there's a strong emphasis in the reflections on an inner light. It's very much to me respecting the individuality and the worth of every individual. But in the meditation, there is a seeking of this. It's almost calling for the person to go beyond their particular little concerns to what is more important in a bigger sense. And I found that in Quaker meetings to be very, very important. And there's some meetings, they're called settled meetings, that can really bring forth this so that every person who's speaking, even though they don't seem to have a sense that there's that they want to comment on what the people and often they don't. Their response, their statement is not in direct relation to what the previous person said. But often there's a thread that comes through that does suggest, in me, at least with some of the meetings that I've been in, a bigger, a person's being pulled out of themselves to witness something bigger. And that's always been meaningful to me, even in reflections where there's been other direction given.
Yes, Quakers will often say they're to hold others in the light.
Yes.
Or they will, when meditating, a thought will come to them. The early Quakers described that the God was talking to them. Many more modern folks think it's their intuition, maybe their conscience. It's when they take a shower and they get an idea. It's just important to still your mind, at least we find, and listen to just still your mind and listen, see what comes up.
They often in meetings with all minds are clear here, so that things are taken away. They do threshing sessions, which is a farmer term for gathering up materials. And so that's when there's a real strong issue. One little thing we mentioned about schools, they were often boarding schools of farmers, Quaker farmer kids who couldn't go. There weren't school buses. Mom and dads didn't take their kids to school. Well, they came for the week and then went home in the weekends, and school was held when there weren't farm chores to be done. So we really appreciate this. I will, if people don't know our email, I'm going to try to put it in chat, but Scott's got the keyboard, but it's, can you type it? We're going to, if I can do this, it's sns@swwalton.com.
No, yeah, John has it.
John has it, yeah. Oh.
Or text me to arrange. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
Please do. Yeah, go ahead and put it in the chat. That'd be good.
Yeah, all right, hold
we'll
on.
put it in the chat.
In just a minute. Here, hold on here. I'm just writing something down. Now, one thing I'm going to add, let's see here.
Tell you
Yeah,
what.
we're going to, yes, I'm going to just stop over here. We tried to do 2 computer screens, but it didn't quite. So here's our email. Yeah, we have not changed our email. Now, we really enjoy this networking opportunity. So, thank you.
Well, so is that your wrap up? I'm going to do a.
That's really our wrap up. I can't think of anything more, Scott.
No, I don't have anything more.
We're just
Well, thank
glad
you
we
so
could do
much
this for you.
Thank you so much for taking or accepting my lobbying.
Yeah, you're a good lobbyist, and we really want the groups to network and to grow together as liberal religious groups. I think so, yeah.
And the one thing I have noticed, I think, in our meetings here in this area, us coming into them is making them more liberal. We're seeing a sense of where things are moving in a more liberal direction. So we're hopeful that that will continue and be other people will find this true around the country.
Well, I want to make a brief plug for some later events today, and I'll number them tomorrow as well. The ones that the membership committee are sponsoring later today include starting at 12:45, Ken Novak from our committee will be giving a presentation. It's called A Closer Look at Society Membership Trends. It's an opportunity to see some digest and some work done to analyze the data that our member societies have been submitting in their financial and statistical reports. Ken is doing a look back for about a decade or so, and he's worked to do his best to incorporate data that's just arriving for this current assembly. So that's at 12:45. Then at 2:45, I will be presenting on the topic of new society development, a capacity building approach. And then James Croft is attending as a discussant, and look forward, I think, to his commentary on what I have to present. And it'll describe a little bit of my efforts over the course of the past 9 months or so in working with some groups who hope to found new ethical societies. And then finally at 4:30, Carolyn Parker, Chris Kamen, and I will be doing a presentation that will build on the book discussion that was held on the 12th. We're taking a book kind of similarly, translating some materials from liberal Christianity on how societies who are facing some challenges can help turn things around, or societies that maybe have plateaued can breathe new life into their operations and hopefully kickstart some growth. So on the 12th, we talked about the book. Today, we will be talking more about how those ideas from the book can be made useful for our societies. Not so different from today's conversation. So thanks again for attending, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Definitely.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Take
Thank
care,
you, everybody. Bye for now.